Hey Hope City, it's Phil here. I'm excited to be starting a new sermon series with you today for the season of Lent as we kind of get ready for Easter. The series that we're doing is called Knowing and Loving Ourselves. And this is going to be a reflective journey where we learn to look within, where we learn to ask the question, what is going on beneath the surface? So for me, this question always conjures up the image of an iceberg, right? And you know what icebergs look like, where only a small portion of the iceberg is visible, right? It's visible because it's above the surface. Most of the iceberg itself is hidden below the waterline. And I think this is a great analogy for who we are as human beings. We have outer lives, the parts of our lives that are visible to ourselves, visible to others, and we also have inner lives, right? The invisible parts of our lives. They're invisible to others, and sometimes even invisible to ourselves, right? It's the part of us that we're sometimes even unaware of. Until something maybe provokes us, right? And causes us to either snap or to blow up. And we call that acting out of character, but it's actually stuff within us that's being revealed. So over the next 7 weeks, my hope for us is twofold. Firstly, I pray that we would know ourselves more as we journey through this sermon series. Secondly, I pray that we would love ourselves more. And my prayer is really rooted in my belief that as we start this introspective journey within, that Jesus would be our guide. I have confidence in his ability to help us truly know ourselves more. And I have confidence in his wisdom to help us know what we need to know when we need to know it, right? You see, if Jesus is our guide, not only will he help us know ourselves and know ourselves at the right time, but my prayer is that he would also teach us how to love ourselves. You see, the goal for us to knowing ourselves is not just that we would just know more about ourselves. No, the goal is to actually be able to love ourselves better. And I can't think of anyone better to teach us how to love ourselves than Jesus. So a quick look at where we're going to be going in the next 7 weeks, kind of a roadmap of where we're going. The first thing that we're going to be talking about next week is family of origin. We're going to begin exploring how the families that we grew up in shaped us. Second week, we're going to be looking at knowing our anxiety. What are the things that we worry about? What are the things that bother us deep within? What are some of the things that we can't shake? Things that tend to plague us when we do life. Third week, we're going to talk about knowing our feelings. How are we doing emotionally? Fourth week, we're going to talk about knowing our reactions. Sometimes our reactions reveal a lot about us, reveal what's going on beneath the surface. And finally, as we come towards Holy Week and as we come towards Easter, the 2 weeks before Easter, we're going to talk about what it means to be loved by the one who lives within our hearts. Okay, so it's not just knowing ourselves, it's experiencing Jesus as he loves us, as he knows us. And then for Easter Sunday, we're going to talk about how Jesus is the one who makes us new again. All right, so that's sort of where we're going to be going. Today, what I'd like to do is to introduce to you the theme passage of Scripture for this journey. And I want to introduce to you 2 interrelated prayers. And the passage that we're going to look at, you probably read in your microchurches already, but it comes from Psalm 139. We're looking at verses 1 to 3 for the first prayer. And it reads like this: You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. If I were to summarize this first prayer, I would say that the first prayer reads like this, or I would interpret it like this, that David is really saying, Lord, you know me and you love me. You see, in these first 3 verses, David is literally saying to God, you know me. You know everything about me. You know my life. You know my decisions. You know my habits. You know my thoughts. You know my feelings. You know all my secrets. He begins this prayer by saying, God, you have searched me. You've looked into not just my life and my story, but into my very being. And then he ends with this prayer, by saying, you are familiar with all my ways. You know me fully and completely. And if I were to just take this prayer literally, I would conclude that all David is praying is simply this: Lord, you know me. And I think in the very first parts of this sermon, as I was working on it, the first draft, that's all I had. Lord, you know me. Lord, you know me. But you see, these Psalms are not just cold descriptions. They're not just technical writings. These Psalms are poetry. I know that what David is saying over and over here is, Lord, you know me, Lord, you know me. But there's poetry involved. There's figurative language as well. There's tone, and there's also emotion. And that too is meant to be heard when David says, Lord, you know me. And so, given that that's the case, I can't help but hear that behind David's prayer, that God knows him completely, he's also stating this underlying reality that he knows that God not only knows him completely, but God also loves him completely. He is confident in how God knows him. He knows that God knows him and loves him. The prayer has to be, Lord, you know me and you love me. They go together for David. I don't know about you, but I find this scary and comforting all at the same time, because it's scary to be fully known. Let me ask you this. How many people truly know you? Or maybe a better way to frame this question is to ask it like this. Who knows you more than anybody else? Who knows you the best? One of the dangers of actually having children is that one day they can actually tell your friends all the weird things that you do at home. Like your weird habits and your weird compulsions, of which I have many. And I'm like cringing right now as I'm telling you this, because I can still remember the moment, when my kids made me feel so exposed and so vulnerable. Like, we're talking about a visceral fear, a primal fear. The fear that my friends, when they come to know me, would be like, ew, or reject me, or see me differently because of what my kids just told them. And don't track them down and ask them, okay? They might actually tell you. But here's the thing, until we are truly known, we aren't truly loved. And that's the core of David's prayer here. Lord, you know me and you love me. And I wonder what it would be like for us as a church to begin praying this over the next 6 or 7 weeks. Lord, you know me. Lord, you love me. And to kind of rest in his love for us. And to be amazed at his knowledge of who we are. That he truly knows us. That there's nothing hidden from him. And yet he completely accepts us and he loves us. And then there's the second prayer. Which is the last 2 verses of Psalm 139. And in it, this is what David prays. He says, search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. If I were to summarize the second prayer, it'd go something like this. Lord, help me to know and love myself the way that you know and love me. Let me say that again. Lord, help me know and love myself the way that you know and love me. You see, David is asking God to search inside him. In our Christian journey, we ask many things of God. We ask God to help us. We ask God for direction in life. We ask God to be with us for his presence. We ask God to bless us. We ask God to protect us. We ask God to provide for us. We ask God to heal us or to heal our loved ones. You see, mostly we ask God to intervene and to change our circumstances, to change things that are outside of us. But this time, this ask is different. This prayer asks God to do something within us. You see, there comes a time in our lives when we realize that our deepest need is not just for our circumstances to change, but for true change to happen within us. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where your biggest need is not that something that is causing difficulty in your life would change, but rather you realize the difficulty is within, the challenge is within. And get this, David here isn't just asking for God to search him, because God already has, but he's asking God to help him know himself the way that God knows him. This means that David is becoming aware of his lack of self-awareness. It means that he's becoming aware of his lack of insight into his own soul. He's becoming aware of his own ignorance when it comes to his own inner life, when it comes to his anxieties and his emotions and his reactions and the ways that his family has shaped him. All the places that we're going to go in the next 6 or 7 weeks. You know, David is asking God to guide him on a journey of self-reflection and introspection. And the key thing to note is that he's asking God to guide him. Because I think if we go on this journey on our own, if we don't have God as our guide, as we self-reflect, as we kind of dive deep into who we are, we have a tendency to either self-deceive or to self-condemn. Let me explain what I mean. We either self-deceive by either repressing or ignoring or explaining away some of the things that we find inside us, some of the things that make us uncomfortable. Or the other tendency is that we self-condemn. We condemn ourselves, and then we end up in despair. And why even start this journey? Which is why it's so important to ask God to lead us, to guide us in this journey. Now, as we start this journey of self-reflection and introspection, we are asking Jesus to guide us so that he can lead us, according to David, in the way everlasting. And we're talking about the way of forgiveness, the way of freedom, the way of wholeness and healing that comes through knowing ourselves and learning how to love ourselves. That's the goal. That's what we're after when we begin looking within. You see, when David says, God, search me, know my heart, know my anxious thoughts, see if there's any offensive way in me, see if there's any sin in me, he's acknowledging that sin is not just limited to morality and salvation as we normally see it. He is not just saying, God, would you help me to remember the sinful things that I've done so that I can confess it and be forgiven? Yes, that is a part of where we need to go, but I think he's also acknowledging that sin is this power that holds us captive. And it's this power that leaves us broken in life. And sin affects us in ways, emotionally, psychologically, in ways that we are unaware. So I want to invite you to journey with us, to join us in this journey of asking God to help us look within, that we may truly learn to know ourselves and love ourselves and experience this way of everlasting, this way of forgiveness, this way of freedom, this way of finding wholeness and healing. I think sometimes when we look within, what we're afraid of is what we find. The broken parts of who we are, the sinful parts of who we are. But I'm going to be honest with you. Every time that I look within, every time that I go to places where I'm afraid, I find that Jesus is already there. He meets us in the deepest, darkest, broken parts of who we are. And that is where we find we are truly loved and truly accepted. That he is meeting us there, but he's already there. We're just kind of late to arrive. Hope City, I want to invite you to pray these two prayers with me over the season of Lent. The first being, Lord, you know me and you love me. And the second is, Lord, help me know and love myself the way you know and love me. All right, that's going to be this resonating prayer that we're going to come to over and over again as we explore the different parts of who we are, as we kind of do a deeper dive within. All right, in your microchurches, I have 3 questions that I'd love for you guys to unpack and I'd love for you guys to discuss. The first question is this: when you were growing up, how did your family do emotions? What emotions were encouraged, for you to express? What emotions were discouraged? You were supposed to just keep that silent. You weren't supposed to express that. You weren't supposed to show that. All right? So growing up, how did your family do emotions? Second question, in life, who knows you the most? Okay, in life, who knows you the most? Okay, and third question, what difference would it make in your life if Jesus helped you to know and love yourself the way he knows and loves you? All right? We're going to have, I think we're going to have an amazing time just kind of journeying together. I hope it's profound. I hope we slow down, not only to discuss certain things within our microchurches, but as we've been doing, even with the Contemplative Practices series, there's practical elements to it. And so I really encourage you, not just to hear the mini sermons, but if there's little bits of homework, little bits of reflection that we're suggesting that you take 5 minutes, 10 minutes out of your week to do, I really encourage you to dive into this. I think we'll benefit as we learn about ourselves, as we learn to know, and as we learn to love ourselves the way Jesus does. All right? Be blessed, Hope City. Hope to see you next week.